Alright, let's break down what automation means in a straightforward way. There are plenty of no-code tools out there, and one of the most popular is Zapier. If you're in the automation game, you've probably heard of Zapier. I'd say it's one of the easiest and most beginner-friendly tools out there. So if you're just getting started and want to get things done quickly, Zapier is a solid choice. But keep in mind, it's also the priciest option. Zapier is the most expensive automation tool around. Instead, I'd suggest looking at Make.com, which is probably the second most popular tool. We actually use Make.com in our daily workflow. We've ditched Zapier entirely and now rely on Make.com as our go-to. If you're looking to save some money, you might also want to check out Activepieces. There are a ton of different tools out there, and I'm not saying one is necessarily better than the others. It really comes down to personal preference. For example, Pabbly is another well-known tool. The list goes on. But here's something that a lot of people miss. There's a hidden champion among all these tools, and that's Airtable. This is kind of a secret weapon. If you have an enterprise plan with Airtable, which isn't cheap, you get unlimited automations. Even on the business plan, you get a ton of value. Why? Because you can generate unlimited workspaces, and each workspace gives you 100,000 runs. For someone just starting out, this might be overkill, but it's something not a lot of people know. So when you're comparing prices, and if you want to take your faceless game to another level, you can do a lot of your automations directly in Airtable using built-in scripts. With 100,000 runs per base, if you compare that to Zapier, it's a steal. You'd be paying 10 times as much for the same number of tasks on Zapier. So if you're serious about automation and ready to level up, I'd highly recommend looking into Airtable scripts and maybe even upgrading to the business or enterprise plan. Now, let's get into the basics of automation. To keep things simple, let's use Activepieces since it's the cheapest option and almost as easy as Zapier. The first thing you need to understand is the trigger. What kicks off the whole flow? Let's use YouTube as an example. Inside YouTube, you can connect to a channel, and when you feed it a URL or a channel ID, it checks for new videos. That could be your trigger. Every time a new video is uploaded, the automation kicks in. It's pretty much like the process we talked about earlier. What could be the start? What could be the trigger? In this case, the start is when we upload a video manually. That triggers the RSS feed, and from there, the automation begins. There's just one rule to remember. If this happens, then that will happen. It's pretty simple, but if you're not familiar with it, it might seem a bit vague at first. Think of it like this. If your t-shirt is dirty, then you need to wash it. Same concept. In Activepieces, it's straightforward. It might not have as many apps as some other tools, but it does have one big advantage: the code builder. This might be overkill for a beginner, but there are plenty of videos out there that explain how you can use it. So let's say you're a beginner. What can you do? You've got the if statement. If a new video is uploaded, then I want to upload it to my Airtable base. You just connect Airtable, and then you can create a record. It's the same idea as before. When the RSS feed comes in, you create the item. Now, what about the transcript? That's a bit more complicated, but I've already made a video on how to get transcripts for free. You can check out my earlier videos for that. It requires a bit of code, but let's say you've got the transcript and now you want to create a blog draft. For that, you'll need some kind of AI tool. The most popular choice is OpenAI or something like Claude. There are a ton of options out there, but here's a tip. I'd recommend checking out Strio over OpenAI. Why? It's simple. There's a new model coming out every week, and each time it beats the old one. It can be frustrating to have to keep changing your flow because of this. With Strio, you can switch models easily without all the hassle. You can just pop in your prompt and choose any model. Claude, Mistral, OpenAI, you name it. So you've got your AI tool, and now you've created your first blog draft. You can do the same thing with social media posts and extend the automation however you like. I don't want to get too specific here, but the main point is that this process is simple at its core. Sure, it can get more complex, but the basics are straightforward. We've got the if statement. Something happens, and then the next step follows. You can even name your steps. Like here, we could call it blog, so you know exactly what's happening. You can take a screenshot of this and add it to your process map. Why? Because because it helps you visualize the flow. Sometimes you need different software to solve different problems, and having it all in one view is super helpful. Let's say you're happy with your setup, but now, for whatever reason, you want to use make.com and share your content on Facebook, Instagram, and so on. To show you how simple make.com is, here's a basic overview. Make.com works a little differently. It flows from left to right rather than top to bottom. You can connect items by clicking on the little plus sign and searching for any integration. Make.com has a ton more integrations than Activepieces. So, say you're looking for Instagram. You find it, and now you can start posting. Maybe you also want to upload your image to Google Drive. No problem. You can create a folder and upload the file. The possibilities are pretty much endless, and it all comes down to your imagination. This is where your process map comes into play. If you start with a process map and follow it, you don't have to think as much. You just follow the steps. That's why I highly recommend creating a process map, no matter how big or small your channel is. If your map says to create a Facebook post, you just follow that. Of course, things can get more complicated. You can add filters or conditions, but that's a bit advanced for now. Make also has modules like flow control or routers, which let you dictate how the flow goes. But again, that's more advanced. The key takeaway is that the basic process is the same. One thing I love about make.com is the explanation tool. It shows you how the flow works step by step. You can see the path it takes, and if you need to update your Airtable base or anything else, it's all laid out. You can follow the flow, see where it goes, and make adjustments as needed. In the end, it's all about understanding how the automation works. Once you've got that down, you can start building more complex workflows, but the basics remain the same. Now, let's dive into a real-world example.